Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and install the appropriate amount of springs in the lifting mechanism on both sides. So I found a package of springs from the hardware box. But I want to just talk for just a minute about the appropriate amount of springs, because if you've got a twin, full, queen, or king, it's a different amount of springs. So typically on a queen size, which is what we're putting together today, we will need to put 7 springs on either side. If it's a king, we're going to put all 9. You'll notice that there are 9 opportunities in this plate to attach springs. I'll do all 9. If I'm going to do a twin size, we'll only need 3 springs. If you're going to do a full size, then you're going to need 5 springs on either side. So because this is a queen, we're going to do 7 on either side. You'll notice from the factory that they have pre-installed 4 springs. And because I'm going to need to put 7 on, there's an opening where 1 spring is not in place on this lifting mechanism. And I'm going to need to access that. So on a queen or a king, what I'm going to do first is dislodge and take out these springs that are on the bottom. I'm going to do that by just by moving this arm until that mechanism here over on this side is as close as I can here, and those will just kind of fall out the bottom, and I'm just going to release them. And now, because this is a queen, it'll give me the opportunity to install one right here in the middle. Let me just explain a couple of things on these springs. You'll notice if you look closely that one of the sides of the spring on this end curl, that it's been cut more straight up and down, where the other side is at a slight angle. If you can identify that, that makes it a little easier on the installation. A little bit tough sometimes to see, but I can clearly see that this one's cut at a more of an angle and this one's straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the side that's cut straight and I'm going to lace it into this upturned portion of this plate. And then I'm going to leave my fingers right here underneath it, and I'm going to bend that spring and kind of slip it underneath this arm, this T-arm, and then it'll click into place. You'll want to make sure that these springs have a tendency to drop back out, so you'll kind of want to mind them as you're working through these. So that's my 3rd spring. Going to go to my 4th spring. Okay, I can see that this one's the flat cut side, so I'm going to spin that into that. I also want to make sure that this spring is seated as far into this upturned plate as possible. In other words, the spring isn't caught on the edge, it's all the way in. Again, leaving my fingers kind of underneath it to pry down against. I'm just going to slip that underneath there and slip it into that hole. So that's my 4th spring. Now I'll go up here and I'll get this 5th spring up at the top. Okay, this is my straighter cut. And I will just go ahead and bend that down. Now this side I can also lift up a little bit on this arm and rotate that into position. Again, I'm going to work that arm. I'm going to work that arm a little bit there so I can get that underneath, pop that into place. Again, I'm making sure that these kind of stay up. I had one slip out, just fix that. Now when you get down here, this is a little easier because the plate is not in the way. So I'm going to take that 6th spring, slip that underneath there, kind of put that arm, I'll work this arm just a little bit, just make sure that these stay in position. And then my 7th spring, I will go ahead and put in this 2nd to the bottom hole and kind of slip that under. And I'll want to just make sure those stay. I'll draw that back just a little bit, put some tension on them. Now if I was going to be doing a king size, I would go ahead and put in my 8th spring up here and then my final 9th spring down here. Now I'll go to the other side and repeat this process. All right, so again, in a queen size, I've got 7 of my springs loaded. Now again, if you're doing a twin or you're doing a full, the twin is going to have 3 springs, and those would just be 3 in the center. And now if you're going to do a full size, if you're putting a full size together, you're going to need 5 of these springs. And so you'll just kind of get them in the center as much as possible. You can't center them exactly, but as close to the center as possible is the appropriate way to load the springs. The spring cluster should be in the center as much as possible of this lifting mechanism.